Hilariously enough, I'm such a literal person. The background in journalism, I had to kind of let go of those clear and concise, and I had to kind of relearn how to write during this process. Explain, set the scene, describe what you're seeing. So I had to tell myself, like, have fun with this. And even my editors were like, Mila, you have an entire book.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage. Okay, everyone. So imagine you're lying in bed after a deep conversation with your mother, and suddenly a complete sentence appears in your mind. Not just any sentence, but one that will change the entire trajectory of your creative life. Well, that's exactly what happened to today's guest, Mila Maxwell, when the opening line of her debut novel, Finding Lady Baltimore, arrived like a gift from the universe. But Mila just isn't any author. She's a French and Canadian firefighter, gym owner, and a mother who decided to write what she calls a memoir hidden as fiction. So, very exciting stuff. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about regarding the writing process, turning one's own life into a novel, and of course, that calling that just comes to us sometimes in the middle of the night, right? So, without further ado, Mila, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. What an intro.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation. Well, thank you. I think it's important to give our authors a nice background so that everybody knows who we're talking with. But of course, we need a follow up to that introduction. So tell us a little bit about that sentence that appeared in your mind.
Yeah, so the sentence itself, which I will get to, it's not actually
Uh,
in the book, but it was, yeah, it was almost like it was this catalyst that like my life has not been the same since. And there's a lot of stuff that happened before. I have a sister that has cerebral palsy, and it was challenging growing up with her, and not because of her challenges per se, but because just because I was very empathetic and didn't always know how to cope with what she was going through.
mm,
But basically, the sentence was Martha was just 17 years old when her entire life flashed before her eyes, except it wasn't her life at all, it was that of her younger sisters. And I mean, Martha's not even a character in my book. So it
right.
was just very strange how that came
Yeah.
about. And I researched, like, what does the name Martha mean and why did it come to me the way that it did? But yeah, every time I kind of got distracted when I was writing, I was like, no, I have to go back to that sentence. And that was like the grounding sentence that always kept me focused. So yeah, I was like, what if I could write a story or a book around that? And it was an immediate, like, I have to write, this is a book. This is a book. I don't know how long it will take me. I don't know what I'm doing, but this is a book.
Well, hey, I love it. And I think all authors can kind of relate to that. There seems to usually be a moment in our lives when we think something just comes to us, right? And, we feel like that's something that needs to be developed and turned into a story. And it's great that you're kind of a perfect example for that. So, there you go.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, moving forward from that and a little bit about yourself, I guess I'm curious to know a little bit about the other side of you. I mean, you're a volunteer firefighter, you have a gym, you're a mother. How do you balance all that with writing a book?
I think those other things were almost like an outlet when I was writing the book because
Mm,
they all seemed to come together at the same time. Like the gym is fairly new, that was a year ago.
okay.
Um, but the firefighting and the book, there was a lot of changes and a lot of things that went on that particular summer. It was almost like I got tired of pretending. I got tired of holding everything in. I got tired of putting on this show and almost wearing this cloak, if that makes sense. But I said, no, like that's something that interests me. I'm gonna try it.
Right.
And I think for a long time, I had owned a business. I had a nutrition consulting business for 8 years. I had sold it. I was very burnt out. I had been working with a couple of friends of mine at the local bike shop for a year or two. And I just got to the point that I'm like, I can't. I was exhausted. I had put everything out there. And I said, I've got to start living more authentically, and I've got to start living in a way that whatever I'm doing fuels me. Whatever I'm doing brings me joy. I need to stop worrying less about what other people think, how they perceive me, and not in a selfish way, but I said I need to stop taking care of everyone else but myself.
Yeah, that's so powerful, and I think a lot of people have trouble doing that. It's hard because it's usually in the back of our minds, ourselves. We think of others first, and clearly, as you mentioned before, you're very empathetic, so it's a challenge. But I'm glad that you're able to push past that and do what you need to do, get your passion out there, and start writing. And it's funny. Actually, recently it was a fun fact. The writer of To Kill a Mockingbird actually had to do that same thing, take like a year off of her job and focus on herself to write it. So you're kind of, exemplifying that same type of method, just making sure that you are focusing on what you need to do. So I think that's really inspiring.
I can't
um,
believe you just compared me to her, but that's amazing.
it's weird. I feel like I just stumbled upon that fact earlier today and I just felt like it connected. So there you
Well,
go.
it's funny because my husband, he'd seen how exhausted I was, how burnt out, how probably close to depressed I was, and he said, "Can you just take some time off and figure out what it is you want to do?" And I recognize how fortunate I am and how fortunate I was at that time to have a spouse and a partner that was able to say, "You know what? Like this is what you need." And at the time, I don't think I wanted to hear it because I saw staying home as a weakness because I've
Yeah.
always been hardworking. I've always been, push, 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 drive, drive, drive. And I was never going to get to the point that I got, which was a point of clarity when I got the idea for the book. I don't think I would have ever got there had I not listened to him. I just had to do it when I was ready.
Understood. Right. Well, I mean, it's a great path to take. And I think a lot of authors can definitely be inspired by that because, hey, I mean, here you are now and you got the book right behind you. If you don't mind showing off that cover for us, I think it's something that, this way we can all kind of know what it looks like when we're shopping for it. So tell us about that cover design. Did you have a say in what it looks like? Did somebody help you out with it? What was that process like?
Yeah, I did. So I worked with a designer, and I, it was funny because as soon as I saw it, and I said, "That's exactly what I would have done," even though I couldn't picture how it was going to turn out. So when I was working with them, I basically just said, it's in the book, there's a suitcase, and I find things in the suitcase. And I kind of gave them some elements to use when they were designing it, and they blew it right out of the park. I couldn't believe it. They gave me four options, and they saved that one for last, which I think they knew like this is the one. And the only change that I made was I had them make the blue a little bit more vibrant, but and I had them add a little pink envelope, which I have one right here, but a little pink envelope, which is part of the story, I suppose. But I just had them add that right there, and that was not on the original one. But yeah, they nailed it.
Understood. All right. Well, amazing stuff. I think it's a great way to symbolize the book and give a good overview of what it might, what we can expect from it. So awesome. So let's dive into the content a little bit. I mean, it's set in the Bay of Fundy. There's powerful tides that must become a character in your story. So tell us about that setting. Why did you choose that particular setting to show your main character Morgan's journey?
I grew up in Nova Scotia, right on the coast, and yeah, I think wherever you grow up becomes such a part of you. But especially growing up near the ocean. It was such a huge part of my upbringing. We'd go to the beach all the time. And yeah, it was like you said, it almost became a character in the story. And I think it's very poignant in the fact that when I was growing up, I always thought, keep your emotions at bay, always keep yourself together, control yourself, don't let other people see your negative emotions. Whereas if you want to get a little bit symbolic or maybe even a little corny, when you look at the ocean, sometimes she's calm, sometimes she's very loud, and stormy and she's beautiful in both ways. So I had to kind of learn, or I guess Morgan had to learn, that you can be yourself and you can show those things and still be quite beautiful in the process.
Understood. No, I love that. And it's cool that you kind of based on your own experiences a little bit too. But of course, there's probably some research involved to make sure everything was like accurate, a little bit at least, or was it mainly from like your memory and own experiences?
Yeah, memory, and I mean it's the highest highs in the world. So I just there was some there were a couple different numbers out there, but I went with what I knew and I had grown up with, and I said, well, if anyone wants to fact check and be specific about it, that's their jam. But that's another reason I chose to write fiction too, is because I could have a little bit more play and a little bit more fun and not be so caught up in specifics of when things happened and if they happened in order and all of these different ways to move the plot along. So that was another big reason that I chose to write it in fiction.
Understood. So yeah, I mean, this is all really exciting. It's great to know that you kind of balance authentic experiences with some research. But not only about the setting, but also in your character dynamics. I mean, you have a great way of um, creating a relationship between your characters. There's Morgan and Sadie, but between them, there's like love, resentment, guilt, protection. I'm having a feeling it's kind of related to your own experiences as well. But tell us about how you translate that in the written form. There must have been some, a lot of planning involved. What was that like?
Yes and no. I think so. I mean, looking back now, I just turned 40, and looking back, I said to myself, I said, "My gosh, like I lived in such a state of survival for so long, and I didn't even recognize it." And I thought to myself, like, you know what? Like other people have these defining moments, whether they live in trauma or they live in poverty or they live in, and I never lived that way. So I think I pushed those things down to say, no, well, like what you're going through is not supposed to be difficult. So suck it up and deal with it. Yeah, you have a sister that has challenges and that has disabilities, but it could be so much worse. So I always thought like what I was going through was never really important enough to talk about. So yeah, that's another reason why I chose to write fiction. But I've learned over the years that you can have coexisting emotions, you can have coexisting experiences. And someone had taught me that when I became a new mother 11 years ago. The word and. I remember seeing this post and it said, you can have resentment and gratitude live together. You can have both happiness and sadness. You can have fear and faith that live together. So, right, it's not one emotion or one experience over the other. Sometimes it's the blending of the two. So I think that is a big theme in the book is Morgan feels so many different things and she doesn't always know how to express them, but looking back as she revisits her story from an older perspective, she can see those struggles. She can see those experiences for what they were from an older, more mature vantage point.
Understood. So it's kind of cool how I guess they're developing throughout the course of the book, getting more mature and kind of like seeing things from different points of view. At least someone if I'm understanding that correctly, which is really cool to see because that's very relevant to our own lives. Things change as we grow older.
Mhm.
Um, and I guess that kind of goes to relate to what you describe as, the quiet struggle siblings are often facing. A lot of us can relate to that. So I think it's really cool that you bring all that into the light. Um, but also, I think one thing that you do is really good is you take these heavy themes, but you make it hopeful, which is really beautiful. And I think that's something a lot of authors have trouble doing. Can you talk a little bit about how you made sure there's a balance between the heavy details and the hope? How did you make that happen? Was it related to the characters or?
Yeah, I think it was through the characters. And originally I was going to write it as a memoir. And I went down that path for a little while. And I said, you know what, this feels really flat. It almost feels too personal and almost too boring. And I'm not saying that anyone who writes a memoir, I mean, maybe their lives were a bit more interesting than mine, but I chose to write a memoir hidden as fiction because I was able to add imagination. I was able to add elements of almost magical realism to the story, which hilariously enough, I'm such a literal person with a background in journalism. I had to kind of let go of those clear and concise, and I had to tell myself, like, have fun with this. And even my editors were like, Mila, you have an entire book to explain, set the scene, describe what you're seeing. So I had to kind of relearn how to write during this process, to not write, a news story, but to write a book that people were able to visualize and see themselves in.
It's important to know these details, so I like
And I
that a lot.
think it was easy for me because that's actually, like, those were our characters. I was the one that was always carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. I was the one that always overthought everything and learned to manage the room. Like, that's who I was for a very, very long time. And then my sister's character, that was very much like her. Same with my parents. So it was easy to write those characters because while they were a version that was maybe more um, focused on maybe not so much their good parts, but their flaws. I wasn't trying to polarize them necessarily, but I was really trying to make certain parts of each character stand out for what they were, but then come together in the end to say, you know what, we had our challenges like any other family, but in the end, like, it was kind of love that won out over all of it. And I think that really shines through in the story, which,
Absolutely.
yeah, it was a very healing experience writing
Right,
this
well,
book.
yeah, I love that, and I guess that kind of answers my one question that I had sent to you, the idea that this is a memoir hidden as fiction. It sounds like it was a very cathartic experience for you to really go through everything. Other people might see it as challenging, but for you, it gave you hope, it seems, which is exactly why there's so much hope in the book. Would you agree with that, or were there any specific challenges you found yourself coming across?
Yeah, like, there's stories that people might read that think, "Oh, is that actually true?" And maybe,
Mm.
some people that knew me really well asked, and I'd say like, "Oh, no, that didn't happen."
Oh,
But
okay.
right, it's like there's certain scenes that it's like, "Oh, do you actually go through that?"
Right.
And I've told everyone, like, if you have questions, ask. But then some people don't want to know because they're like, "No, I feel like it would ruin the story for me." So it was, for me, I knew what was true and what wasn't, but it was such a great way to just get rid of everything that I had carried with me for so long, all of these resentments and guilt and shame and self-hatred and all of these horrible things that I thought about myself, that once I got it out and I was able to process it on paper, it made me have difficult conversations with my parents. And I remember, something that really touched me was things that my mom, who is a very stoic person, things that she saw, things that she went through, things that she faced with either even some of her closest friends that she had never talked about, that I felt like she was able to get things off her chest. My dad was able to get things off of his chest. So there was a lot of these unspoken things within our family that were never discussed. And once this whole book writing process began, a lot of those walls were able to come down, and it's completely changed the relationship I have with myself, with my family, with my sister. Like, it was the best it was the best thing ever to be able to write this book and to see it through and publish it and share it with
Yeah.
everyone.
Exactly, and I love that. It must feel so, like, wholesome to have it out there for others to learn from to your experiences, and also to just, like, you know, have it out. I guess not to repeat myself, but for people to be able to immerse themselves in what you've been through, you know what I mean? That must be, really, inspiring, and I think because you do have a journalism background too, it must have been really just, like, great to finally talk about your own experiences and translating that into fiction rather than the journalism aspect. But kind of to branch off of that, was there any difference between your journalistic writing and fiction writing? Did you find, any
Yeah.
changes?
Yeah, and I think I always would have pegged myself as someone who would have written maybe um, a documentary or something with
Mhm.
facts because I'm such a researcher. So writing in the way that I did with this veil of creativity, I was like, oh my gosh, that was inside of me this whole time.
Right.
So yeah, that was very surprising because I had a process. Like, as soon as my son left for school around 8 in the morning, I would write, and I would sometimes write till 11 and I would be done. Other days I'd write till he was almost home. And it was funny how sometimes I had ideas of what I would write and it wouldn't happen. And then other days, like the climax, for instance, I remember one of my editors being like, "You're almost done this book and you don't have a climax." I was like, "Really?" So I remember sitting here and it just wrote itself. I was like, Weird."
Wrote
So that,
itself. Okay.
yeah, like that happened probably 3 or 4 times in the book. Like there's a scene where Morgan and her friends are stargazing. And it's like, where did that come from? So I, started researching like constellations and all of these different things. So
Cute.
I
Yeah.
had a lot of fun. As healing as it was, some days I had a lot of fun with it.
I love that, and that's the best thing that any author could hope for is to have fun with it. It's not a chore, it's something you're passionate about and love doing, and, I love that. That's just incredible.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
still on a high. Like I'm still on a high from writing it. The marketing part has been a bit more challenging because I'm not one to necessarily put myself out there. And I feel like there's a lot of scammers out there that are, oh, like pay us this amount of money and we'll promote your book. And anyway, but no, the writing part of it, it was something I was always excited to get up and write. And yeah, I looked forward to it. And I look forward to doing it again, hopefully again someday.
Yeah, definitely you should. Have you considered anything in the future, by the way? Anything that we could be on the lookout for?
Probably not in the next year, maybe in the next
Ah.
2 years, but I've sent myself some ideas to maybe say, okay, like maybe in the new year, I'd like to do the audio version of the book this fall, and have it out by Christmas. But once that's done, I think I'll probably start dabbling with a little bit of maybe what's out there and what I can, whether it's a prologue to the book or like a sequel. I don't know. I don't know. I don't even have much ideas, but I'd like to figure it out because it was a very cool process that I'd like to do again for sure.
I love that. Yeah, definitely. And if you loved it so much the first time, the second time could even be better. And you've already learned a lot from the first experience, so you can translate that into the next. It's certainly
Exactly.
inspiring.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, all this being said, I think we should. I'm wondering if there's any other writing tips that maybe you'd like to offer to the audience. Anything that you wish you knew when you were getting started in the writing that others could probably benefit from. What do you think?
I'd say don't overthink it. That was something like as a chronic overthinker, it was something that I had to just feel and just be like, okay, if I don't necessarily have to have a plan in place, but if something is on my mind, I need to write it. And that's something that the editors that I worked with at the time, they would say, okay, if you're stuck, just write what's on your mind. And it was interesting to look back and say, I had to almost, as silly as this sounds, I had to almost peel back some layers to be able to find the good stuff that was hidden underneath. And a lot of the things I wrote weren't really used in the story or the book because they were just they were clutter that I had to clear out of the way to get to the good stuff
Right.
underneath. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always say that that's a great way to go about it. Just get all your ideas out there, and even if some things aren't used, at least you wrote it down, and were able to create more content based off of where your inspiration was flowing at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So amazing stuff. I love that. Um, so if people do want to connect with you, perhaps to be aware of when you have your new book out a couple of years, or to ask questions about the book, or just be inspired by your writing and learn more about the book itself, where can they best reach you?
I'm on social media. I have not gone too far down TikTok because it's overwhelming, but
And-
I'm on Instagram and Facebook. So it's just Mila Maxwell author.
Okay.
And I have a website, but it's kind of poopy. It's a Canvas, it's a Canvas site, so it's like everything's there, but it's not like anything fancy. So if you just typed in Mila Maxwell website, it would probably show up. And yeah, the book's available on Amazon for purchase, so it's Kindle or get a paperback or hardcover. Hardcovers are quite fancy. They don't have the jacket, which I was quite pleased with.
Oh, you didn't want a jacket.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Is there a reason why? I'm just curious, not to break the flow, but
Oh, the jackets drive me nuts. Like
never heard a
I
preference on
borrowed
one or the
yeah,
other.
I borrowed a book from my cousin, and it's it had a jacket, and I said, "What is going on with this thing?" It was like sliding up and falling off. So I just ended up
Just
putting
take it
putting
off.
it aside.
Right, right. Okay, well, hey, no jacket it is then, everybody. So if you're a jacket hater just like me, like, it's a perfect book for you. But that's not the only reason. This book could resonate with a ton of people, whether or not you relate directly to what Mila's been through. There's a lot to be learned here about relationships and, dynamics and just finding hope, right? So it's definitely a good read to check out. We're going to put the links in the description box of this podcast today so you can go ahead and click on over and get in the know. So as we begin to wrap up then, Mila, I'm wondering if you have any final thoughts to share with the audience, anything to leave them off with today. What do you think?
Don't overthink and don't say I don't have a background in writing or I've never done this before. I mean, yeah, I had a background in writing when it came to journalism, but I didn't really have a very broad background in creative writing. So just try it. And even if you don't publish it, at least if you're going through something or you have something on your mind, creativity is out there for everyone. It's not something that is an elitist thing that only certain people can do. And I tell my husband all the time, like he's like, oh, I'm not creative. I can't paint or I can't write. It's like, well, you're into business, so you have creative solutions on how to manage people and how to inspire people and motivate them. So everyone shows their creativity differently. And if you are going to dabble into writing, I would suggest that you get like what I did is I had a Google document, and I think at the beginning I was trying to do like, okay, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. But if you have an entire document and you have all of it into one, it's easy to go back and say, oh, you can write notes and say, okay, I introduce this here, come back later and tie it together. So I felt once I dumped everything into a Word doc or a Google document, I was able to really have more control over it. And it just, once everything was in there, it almost just like it exploded. It was just like, oh, I have to do this here. And you can move things around. So, long winded answer is yeah, try it. And there's lots of people out there to help. And I actually worked with a company out of Ontario called Working Writers Co. And they were really helpful because I was always nervous that I was going to have this manuscript that was done to my liking anyway, and I would send it to someone, it would be crap. And what I liked about this company was they work with you along the way so that you send things to them and they edit it along the way so they can offer some pointers, they can offer some coaching. And it was almost like going back to school for writing and learning, like I had said earlier in our chat before we started recording, that every Tuesday we would have a lesson. So every Tuesday night it was okay, characterization or developing a scene or kind of thinking on the spot. So that was a very instrumental decision in my writing process.
I love that. And to everybody listening today, there's lots of different programs that are like that, coaches that could help you every step of the way. Authors on Mission is one of them also. We offer ghostwriting and editing and marketing services, coaching, anything you might need too. So if you feel like you're stuck and you don't know where to go with your writing, just search up what Mila worked out into. There's so many different options. So find
Yeah,
the one.
and it's like athletes need a coach, right? Elite
Exactly.
elite athletes need coaches. So it's like if whether you're a seasoned writer or just starting out, like if it's something that you really want to try and get better at, yeah, there's lots of options out there to help you with it.
Yeah.
Good segue. Good segue.
Yeah, perfect, right? Look at us go. Well, that being said, Mila, this has been a really fun conversation. Finding Lady Baltimore is available everywhere, guys. The link's in the description box of this podcast today. So yeah, if you're ready to dive deeper into Mila's world, check out those links. And to all of our aspiring authors listening, just know that what we learned today shows us that expertise isn't about writing credentials, but just about living fully, paying attention to what's going on around you, turning that into stories that others can learn from, and you'll have it. It'll come your way, and just stay positive. So yeah, Mila, thanks for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and to our listeners, until next time, just keep writing, keep growing, and keep sharing your mission with the world. We'll see you next time on the Authors on Mission podcast. That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.